Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the ResourceWorks Society. His website, resourceworks.com. Welcome back to the show, Stewart.
Thanks, Jim. Hey, don't forget, I'm on Twitter, SJ Muir. I, from time to time, well, quite frequently, do share my views on all kinds of topics.
Well, with the coronavirus, a lot of work in Canada is shut down. Do you think people are now using this as an opportunity to say, hey, all this construction work on pipelines and so on should just be shut down permanently?
Oh, yeah. I was talking this morning with one of those activists. They've spent a lot of time long before COVID finding all the reasons why they think that we shouldn't have any sort of industrial development that has a footprint on the landscape. So they oppose the pipelines, they oppose mines, they don't want the oil sands, they don't want natural gas. You know, how they get around is a question I don't have the answer to, but they oppose all these things. Well, now with COVID, they're saying, here's the new reason why we oppose all these things is because of COVID. Well, you know, pick a lane, but what is the argument? So what we hear some of these environmentalist groups saying is you can't have COVID because or you can't have pipeline construction, you can't have the oil sands, you can't have Site C major construction project going on because you are bringing in workers from outside who maybe have exposure to the virus, and that could affect local communities. It could be unsafe for other workers. It could affect local First Nations. All these statements are actually true, but the thing here is, look, when you look at the industrial projects that are driving the Canadian economy, including the ones I've just named, these employ the best practices. They have hygiene, they have medical expertise, they have almost an obsession with safety. And just to give you an example, Jim, I from time to time, if I have a meeting with people, say from the mining industry, I've noticed this. The first time it really threw me, never seen this before. I went to a meeting of mining people. They were hosting me. We were talking about something. And the first thing that happened was, we're going to review safety for the room. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? We're in downtown Vancouver. We're in a brand new building. Everything's perfectly safe. But no, they had a safety briefing for those in the boardroom. The exit's over there. We've checked the fire stairs. They're in good order. There's no blockades. We have a plan for evacuation that's written here. And once that was done, we were able to have the meeting. And I thought, why do they do that? That's crazy. There's not really a risk there. Here's why they do it. It's because people who are in charge of industrial activities like mining, building pipelines, construction, heavy industry, have lives at stake every day in their work. And it's the lives of the general public in some cases, but it's especially the lives of the workers at the front line who are working with heavy equipment. They're working in confined spaces. They're working underground in mines. They're, dealing with these gargantuan-sized industrial complexes in some cases where, one human person is a small and frail person. When you're talking about the processes and machinery, you got to be super careful. So you need the high vis, you need the personal protection kit, you need to make sure that mask fits and all that kind of stuff. And so I've seen so often in Canadian natural resource companies this obsession with safety that even comes down to how they meet. And you're telling me that it's not safe for these people to operate in current conditions with COVID. I'm saying there's a culture of safety and health that pervades the industry, and it's how we do things in Canada. And that's why I feel so confident about there being necessary work going on. I mean, not just the farmer and the truck driver and the person putting food on the shelves, things we don't see. We're locked up at home. All that work is happening, but all the work to ensure that the way that Canada makes a living, which is to provide the world with things it needs, can go on. Because if we don't do that, that $350 billion package of borrowing the federal government is doing, who's paying for that?
Dr. Bonnie Henry, the Chief Medical Health Officer for BC, who many say is doing a great job dealing with the COVID crisis, says that construction and related trades are essential and have guidelines for working. Why do you think people are calling for construction to be shut down, perhaps permanently?
Yeah, I think it's opportunistic. We've seen in the case of the Coastal GasLink pipeline, that's the new pipe that is being built to serve the LNG Canada in Kitimat. So through that 42-inch gas pipeline will go the gas that's going to be compressed on the coast and poured onto ships for foreign markets. One of those ships will bring in, I'm told, $100 million. One ship, one cargo. Can you believe it? It's so important to the economy, but you've got people who oppose it for, the usual laundry list of reasons, legitimate reasons, except that we've actually managed all of the issues that they say are issues. And I think we're seeing some opposition to the Trans Mountain Pipeline. You've now got opponents trying to say, aha, look, you're working too close to each other. Well, hey, I went out to have a look recently at the Trans Mountain Pipeline. As far as, I had no special access, just like any other person on the street. I was able to look over there, and I saw the following. I saw people in machines, a driver in a Caterpillar, locked in a cab behind glass in a sealed work control unit. I saw someone 100 feet away directing traffic where people were going to deposit soil that had been moved. I saw other machines like that. I saw a health and safety truck where looked like someone in there on standby, just normal as one would expect to see for site safety. Supervisors walking around. No one was close to each other. No one was doing things that looked in any way unsafe to me. I thought, this is how you do it. And why would you expect this activity to not continue as long as it's well managed? Now, the other side of it is what happens when, in a camp situation, workers like that are going back to a work camp where they reside while on the job. Well, we've seen the major projects. If you look at all the websites, they're very good and transparent with the information they share, because I think they realize that the public does have questions, and they're reasonable questions. So you can find out pretty quickly. They've adjusted during the COVID pandemic their work practices, the hygiene. They're washing things down. You've got the shared food areas. Years ago, I was in several work camps. I toured around, and I noticed in all of them, these were new spick and span operations. You go into the cafeteria, they've got fridges on the side, sort of like you'd find at any big institutional cafeteria, or even at the supermarket, those cool cases where they have sandwiches and fruit, and you could go in and just grab and go with a packed lunch if that's what you want to do. I understand that they have got procedures for making sure people, if they're eating together, are doing so in a sensible, safe way. And they've also, in a number of cases, downsized the number of people who are there. But a lot of these operations, you can't just shut them down. You can't just say, okay, we're going to shut this down and walk away, for a whole bunch of reasons. If it's construction, you've got continuous processes involving schedules, and some of those schedules, if it's a case of a pipeline, have to do with when the equipment is arriving. You've got environmental rules that are very carefully spelt out in the approval permits that are given. And if a bird is going to come to nest at a certain time of the year, it's spring now, they're doing that. You have to be, following certain procedures for that. If salmon are coming up or any other fish are laying eggs and that kind of thing, your permitting makes you accommodate that. So you can't just drop everything. There are certain things that have to happen at certain times. And also with projects like the oil sands or oil and gas, you cannot just walk away from a well that's in production. You can't just shut down a gas plant, that kind of thing. These all need to be managed. And don't forget that we don't do these activities pointlessly out there just for the fun of it. They're for the purpose of developing resources that become products, that become useful in people's lives. And if we don't get them, well, that's just like not getting food. We have to have the ability to heat our homes. Right now in Alberta, it's like minus 20, still winter conditions. People are not going to be able to survive without the reliable supply of fuels to their homes and industry as well. So all these things point me to asking the question in this, how realistic would it be to follow what some of these activist groups are calling for? And my conclusion is that as long as we got people like Dr. Bonnie Henry out there saying that it meets with their medical standards and safety is first, then we're good. So let's follow those rules and we'll be fine.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, April 1st is when a lot of new government taxes or regulations often kick in. Who has taken advantage and disadvantage of this day, both in BC and federally?
Yeah, well, I think one thing to look at April 1st is the carbon tax that's come in. The increase, it's a significant increase right now because the fuel prices are so low. If you go down, obviously everyone can see what it is in their area, very cheap. So you won't notice a huge impact. I was looking at Gas Buddy this morning just to see if there was any evident immediate spike. It's because of the size of the commodity value, cheap gasoline, that you're not seeing this sudden dramatic overnight spike. But that doesn't mean it's not there. And there's not issues that we need to talk about. And one of them is the fairness issue. I've been among those for the last probably 13, 14 years when BC first introduced the idea and then the legislation for one of the world's first carbon taxes in 2008 is when that came in. I always thought that was okay as long as it was fairly administered. When it started, it was revenue neutral, which meant that the revenue that came in also went out in different ways. Now, it's been debated over the years whether it was done right or done fairly, but it was definitely revenue neutral for a long time. It's not anymore, and that's an issue I've got with it. Another issue I have is that the federal carbon tax that is being imposed directly on Canadians, or an equivalent is being brought in by provinces and territories themselves, but either way, every Canadian is affected by this. It is a little bit of a shell game. I mean, they say, okay, we're paying back out what we take in. Well, not all incomes get that. A lot of people don't get these payments. But more important to me is the fact that there are whole categories like business, industrial production, who don't have it rebated. So the fuel tax applies, say a farmer, this is a famous case, it's happening to thousands of farmers, if not all farmers. They are maybe drying grain at their farm after the harvest. They have to reduce the moisture content and keep it dry in the silos. So they use natural gas typically. They used to use coal, probably some still do, but that's being phased out. So natural gas is their next best option. It's abundant, it's pretty cheap as a commodity, but there's a huge tax bill that now is applied to it. Now, when a farmer dries the grain, they don't get a rebate for that carbon tax from Ottawa. No, the extra expense is passed on to the consumer. or they just simply have to eat it from their profits. I mean, it's very hard, given that wheat is a commodity, to say, well, I've decided, one farmer here in the middle of Saskatchewan, I'm going to charge a little more to cover my carbon tax. And the grain buyer in India will say, yeah, that's fine, we'll pay that extra. Do you think that happens? No, of course not. Grain is a traded commodity. The price is set by these other considerations. And so it's being passed along in other ways. And I think ultimately it does flow to consumers. If you're buying that bread, how is that coming to affect you? How does it affect the viability of farmers in this market? Farmers in the U.S., they don't pay that penalty. Does it make their products more competitive? So you go to Costco in Blaine, oh wow, that's so cheap. Well, part of it, the reason it's so cheap, it's complicated, yes, but part of the reason is that they don't face costs like this. So, I think we've got ourselves this carbon tax with all these good intentions on improving the global climate, but it has these effects that are punishing those who can least afford it, and there's no refuge. I mean, you have to buy food to feed your family, and you're paying more because of it. So we don't hear that in the talking points when they're announcing these changes, but I think they show up in all kinds of things, and going to restaurants and anyone who consumes fuel. And here's the thing, Jim, is that the idea is, and we said this in BC when that carbon tax was brought in, the purpose of it is to encourage behaviors that are wanted and discourage ones that aren't. That was the mantra from government that they talked about all the time, which meant we don't want you to burn all that gasoline. We'd like you to ride your bicycle instead. I mean, that's a bit of an extreme. Or maybe they would be thinking, drive less, rather than drive more, drive less, use less fuel, and that way, you won't pay as much tax, and the planet will be better. That's the theory. In practice, people are using more gasoline and diesel than ever. They're buying bigger cars. Everyone wants an SUV now. It's probably seen as child abuse. If you come home with a little car, what? You can't have that. You need a honking big car because it's safe. Mommy's got to have that protection around the kids. For whatever cultural reasons, we're buying bigger cars, and they use more fuel. And fuel is incredibly cheap right now. Like, at the current prices, this is taking us back a decade, right? And is that going to make people use less of it? No, of course not. They will use more of it. Will carbon tax make a difference? Well, it'll make a difference in how much money governments bring in, but it won't make a difference in climate. That's really driven by other things. So you can see that there are some complexities. I've often said I'm not against, in principle, the idea of applying a tax on carbon, but I think the way we're doing it here is not really making a difference, except it's adding new revenue streams for government, which I guess needs the money.
Should BC get a tip of the hat? MLAs are foregoing their annual pay raise today, and BC did not up their carbon tax today as planned.
Yeah, I mean, these are good moves, smart moves. I think the way BC has approached this in so many ways has been exemplary. Others are catching on and picking up on it, doing the same thing. In terms of the MLA raises, that's a matter for the legislature. It's not really a government thing, but when it happens, it reflects poorly, and the average person might well think, oh, that's our government doing that to us. It's obviously more complicated, but I think the fundamental truth in this is that we can see that we have some caring MLAs of all parties who've gotten together to say, this doesn't look good. There's not necessarily an enormous hit on public finances, but it's the right thing to do because everyone is suffering right now. Who really is spared from this? In some way or multiple ways. So kudos to them. And I gather that the federal parliament is unable to come to such a swift common sense determination on their raise. So it's quite a contrast.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF.
surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines. Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, what kind of a situation would our healthcare workers be if they didn't have access to masks, face shields, rubber gloves, and ventilators, all produced because somewhere along the line somebody chopped down a tree or built a mine?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because clearly, we forget about these things in normal times, but we're reminded. We're reminded now. I think truckers are suddenly the new folk heroes, which is as it should be. I spent a few years traveling around parts of the world by truck and appreciating what truck drivers do. And it's incredible, the skills they've got, the life that they choose to adopt, and the hardships that can come with that, and do come with that. It lets society run. It's not, things don't appear on the shelves at the supermarket by magic. They have to be trucked there, and trucking's the choice. Rail, definitely a huge part of our transportation, but it's that final mile, or all miles, is delivered that way. And then, of course, they come from somewhere, but just a direct link. We saw just a few days ago the discovery that there's a Harmac mill in BC that supplies a special kind of pulp product that is used in making masks and medical protection garb, because it's got certain qualities that suit it. So BC forest workers are part of that in a very, very direct way. This stuff is exported to places where it's manufactured into those final products, and then it's used for that. So the whole supply chain when you think about the gases, the fact that a hospital is absolutely reliant on natural gas. I know there are people who out there want to ban fracking and not have natural gas because it's a fossil fuel. But go down to your hospital and have a look at what's happening there, and consider how you would do it with available alternatives. Right now, the reliability you get, people need to sterilize instruments in those hospitals. You need reliable, high heat. The hospital laundries, something I know a little about, are absolutely reliant on natural gas's almost unique abilities, or certainly fossil fuels' unique abilities to heat the industrial-sized machinery, the washers and dryers, especially the dryers, used to dry all those sheets and things. You can't just replace it with electrical products. It's not effective at that scale. So the connections are everywhere. They're very hard to see, and we mostly do forget about them, but they're there. And I think a place like BC that's so reliant on the economy drawn from natural resources, because it's 80% of our goods exports are natural resource products, and the jobs are throughout the entire province, not just in the rural areas where a lot of city people don't get to, but a lot of city people, of course, they're working in mining and finance, insurance, and getting supplies to industrial sites and marketing, and the overseas side of that marketing, huge part of the economy. So something to be, I think, quite proud of. It's also something that no one can take away from us as we look at the economic rebuild that will come whenever COVID is over. If over is the correct term, I think there will be a new normal. But whenever that new normal arrives, we will be looking as a country to leverage our natural advantages, things that we can do uniquely well that the world needs. And the number one thing that we do, it's not just scenery and people being able to come here as tourists, because tourism is going to be in trouble for a long time. It's maybe going to have to be reinvented to some extent. But what's really there is the natural resources, the minerals, the fuels, the wood fibers, the foods that we produce. That's what the world expects Canada to provide them, and that's what we need to do.
Stewart, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the ResourceWorks Society. His website, resourceworks.com. Find him on Twitter at SJMuir. If you have any questions for Stewart or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter at HowStreet. And we're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.